Hey you! Yes, you, watching this video. Do you want to own a piece of Scribbler? Only not a lock of hair or blood or flesh or anything else that will get you in trouble with the law? Well, now you can, with t-shirts, hoodies, tote bags and mugs featuring Obab Scribbler at her Teespring store. You know you want to. I shall now stop talking in third person and send you on to the video. Be lovely to each other and enjoy the show. Fluttershy had lost track of how long she had been staring at the photo. She had long ago stopped counting how many times each day she had just sat and gawked at it. Not bothering about how long each session lasted was a natural next step. It wasn't just the mare's appearance. Any pony could just stand there and be attractive. Some claimed every pony looked the same anyway. Physical attraction was just that, simple and commonplace. Not to say that the mare was unattractive, quite the opposite. Every curve of her body, her simple mane cut, the pink of her coat, the yellow of her mane, her gorgeous gold eyes, the lily tucked delicately behind her ear. They were all the pinnacle of aesthetics. She was the type of mare that was chosen to model for sculptures or the Mona Lisa, the type of beauty who honoured ships as they departed. It was more than just her looks, obviously. Fluttershy had felt the same way about other ponies before. This mare was something special. She looked so vulnerable, so afraid. And yet, if you looked at it the right way, the lily obscuring her eye made it look like she was winking. Shy, and yet forthright. Exposed, and yet confident. Fluttershy had never understood what others saw in her modelling style, not until she had seen this picture. A cursive, flowing signature printed in the corner of the picture listed the mare's name as Lily Valley. It was as perfect as the rest of her. Simple, unassuming, beautiful. Her hoof writing captured every other detail about her so succinctly. It was pretty, curvy, yet bold and striking. Fluttershy pictured the mare writing her name with hesitant confidence, signing the photo, or a cheque, or a love letter. "Fluttershy, what are you doing?" The sudden noise caused Fluttershy to promptly and ungraciously fall off her couch. A loud thunk echoed across her cottage. She let out an inaudible eep and swiftly slunk under it. "Oh, sorry!" Twilight peeked under the cushions. "I didn't mean to scare you. I knocked like 15 times and you didn't answer, so I got worried." Fluttershy murmured something. Twilight nervously rubbed the back of her neck. Guess teleporting inside was a bad idea after all. Twilight glanced around. Her gaze caught on the calendar, and she picked it up with her magic. "Fluttershy?" Another murmur. Twilight began flipping through the pages. It was hardly risque. You couldn't see anything you wouldn't see in a walk through town. But the facial expressions and haunch-heavy camera work raised some questions. What is this? In a flash of pink and yellow, Fluttershy was no longer underneath the couch, gently tugging the pages from Twilight. "Don't bend it!" Twilight promptly dropped it. The sudden lack of resistance sent Fluttershy tumbling backwards, but she quickly regained her balance, holding the uncrumpled papers to her chest defensively. Sorry." Fluttershy tried to cover her reddening cheeks with her mane. I guess I should be the one apologizing. Maybe I should go. I didn't mean to, interrupt you." "No, really, Twilight. I'm sorry." Fluttershy loosened her stance slightly. "I guess I got carried away there for a moment." "Why do you even have that? I didn't think pin-ups were an interest of yours." "I bought it at that nature fundraiser a few weeks ago." Twilight raised an eyebrow. A fresh blush swept over Fluttershy. I always buy one of everything at fundraisers like that, even if I don't really need it. It's for a good cause, after all." Twilight rolled her eyes just a little bit. "Sure." "No, really." Fluttershy rushed over to a closet and opened the door. Inside was a neat, organised stack of dozens of pieces of random junk. Stop the cough, counter COPD today posters, WEE is not fun bracelets, battle botulism signs, a run against rhinopneumonitis participant ribbon, and a number of unworn shirts emblazoned with slogans ranging from Vote Prop 9, Whales are Ponies too, to Save the Badgers, were but a handful of items that inhabited the massive pile. Twilight stood there, silent. Certain that her friend had gotten the point, Fluttershy quietly shut the door. Okay. Why isn't that in there with the rest of that stuff then? Twilight poked a hoof at the saucy calendar, still cradled in Fluttershy's hooves. Fluttershy answered by hiding under her mane. Twilight's eyes widened. Oh my gosh! You have a crush! No, I don't. Oh, Fluttershy, this is wonderful! I just finished reading a book about helping your friends get dates. Wingmare 101 by Sweet Emotion. 3 consecutive weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And Rarity said I could never use it for anything. Twilight was suddenly inches away from Fluttershy's face. So, who is it? Fluttershy blushed. Twilight, you're really close to my face. Oh, right, sorry. Twilight took a step back. Fluttershy sighed. Promise you won't tell any pony? Fluttershy, I would never betray a friend's confidence. I pinky promise, Twilight said sincerely. Well, it's... Sorry, what? Twilight put a hoof to her ear. Twilight leaned in. What? Fluttershy turned an even deeper shade of red than before. Her cheeks were so warm that her mouth simply refused to open. After several noticeable seconds of silence, she simply shoved the calendar forward. April, she muttered. Twilight frowned and carefully grabbed the stack of photos with her magic. In a single swift motion, she flicked it open to the month in question. Her eyebrows shot up shortly after. Fluttershy felt a fresh wave of embarrassment wash over her. She shielded herself with her bangs again. I know. She's too good for me. Twilight snapped her jaw shut. No, it's not that. Just the opposite, actually. Twilight glanced back down at the photo. Lily really doesn't seem like your type. Fluttershy was suddenly inches from Twilight's face. You know her? Twilight took several swift steps backwards. Well, yeah. She and some of her friends run Ponyville's botany club. I go there every Tuesday after my book club, and before my ancient pottery class and my welding workshop. Fluttershy closed the gap between them in the blink of an eye. Twilight's mane wavered slightly thanks to Fluttershy's breath. But you know her? Well, not that well. Like I said, I just talk to her about gardening once a week. Is she single? Well, yes, but... Both ponies found themselves on the floor, Fluttershy hugging Twilight tightly. Oh, Twilight, this is wonderful! It is? Of course it is! Fluttershy picked herself up and stared off dreamily. I just assumed such a perfect, subdued, elegant, charismatic pony like her would live somewhere in Canterlot or Manhattan. I had no idea she lived in town. Really? She's at, like, every big event. And she's always panicking about... Fluttershy's breath ruffled Twilight's mane again. So? Fluttershy smiled innocently. When can you introduce us? Like I said earlier, I really don't think she's your... Twilight trailed off. Fluttershy's soul-melting pouts could cause any pony to lose track of their thoughts, and she knew Twilight was no exception. Twilight looked to the side. It had taken less than 10 minutes to convince Twilight of how important this meeting was, and of how happy it would make Fluttershy. Despite Twilight's well-prepared lecture on the nature of hype and expectations, Fluttershy had insisted that merely meeting such a mare would do wonders for her self-esteem, even if the romantic chances were slim. Twilight had shaken her head and sighed many times, but a few pouts later, and Fluttershy had gotten a promise of a setup. She was starting to regret it. It was one thing to beg her close friend for a favour, but now, sitting in the restaurant, her date due at any moment, she was starting to panic. All right, she had begun to regret and panic long before today. What to do with her mane, whether to wear anything, whether to bring her calendar along for Lily to sign. Her current panic was admittedly more acute than all the rest, since now she was moments away from the actual event, and no pony was here to help calm her down. More than once she had considered bolting, going back to her cottage, back to staring at that photo. It was 1,000 times better than making a bad impression with the world's most perfect mare. Fluttershy was too distracted by dread to notice Lily approaching.
Hello?
Fluttershy nearly fell out of her seat. She strongly considered running away, even as she turned to the source of the greeting. When she saw Lily's smile, however, all her fear and confusion and hesitation melted away. The pink mare looked 1,001 times more beautiful in 3 dimensions. The lily in her hair looked as pristine as it had in the photograph, and though there was no camera angle to accentuate its placement, none was needed. The smell of flowers and freshly cut plants wafted off her body. The smell was engaging, yet not harsh or invasive. Lily smiled again.
Oh, sorry to startle you. You're Fluttershy, right?
Fluttershy nodded. Lily extended a hoof.
Pleased to meet you. My name's Lily Valley. Twilight told me a lot about you.
Fluttershy extended her hoof, but Lily suddenly withdrew hers.
You watched your hoofs recently, right? Twilight told me you were with animals. Oh, of course I did. Right, sorry, of course. Can't be too careful, though.
Lily smiled sheepishly. Their hooves pressed together, and Fluttershy's heart skipped a beat. Then another. She finally noticed she wasn't breathing and took a deep breath. Too deep, as she started coughing loudly into her shoulder. Lily raised an eyebrow.
Right. May I sit down?
Fluttershy nodded enthusiastically.
Please do.
She waved her hoof at the other seat and smacked her hoof against the table in the process. She blinked really hard.
Poker face, don't mess this up.
Fluttershy turned to face the table, and she saw Lily plop herself down in the other seat. Her movements were not quite as graceful as Fluttershy had hoped.
Oh no, does that mean she's already bored? Did I make her uncomfortable and now she just wants to leave? Oh, what do? Are you okay? Huh?
Fluttershy blinked again.
Oh, yes, I'm fine. Twilight said you wanted to ask me something. Oh, yes, I did. And that was?
Fluttershy bit her lip. She had planned some topic of conversation, but she was blanking on it. Thankfully, the waiter arrived to drop off their menus. He mentioned something or other about specials, but Fluttershy was far too busy staring at her not-quite-date lips and ears and bangs and chest to bother listening. Fluttershy saw Lily sense her stares, and turned her head seconds before the perfect pony looked up. Years of practice had made Fluttershy very good at avoiding eye contact, but it was rather tempting to let herself get caught just this once.
So, what did you want to talk to me about again? Oh, well, Twilight told me you're a botanist. Amateur botanist. Right, well, I need...
Lily returned to her menu.
Twilight said you were the town's fauna manager. One of them. I was hoping you could, help me inspect some of the plants near my house. I'm worried they might be poisonous, but I'm not really sure. Perfect,
Fluttershy thought to herself.
And then after we do that, I can invite her in for coffee, possibly dinner, and then we'll spend so much time talking that I'll just positively insist she sleep in my bed while I take the couch, since walking home would be far too much trouble. And then she'll politely insist that she couldn't impose like that, and I'll casually suggest sharing the bed, and Feathers, I'm ignoring her. So it's actually not that hard to recognize poison sumac, poison ivy, and poison choke, and most animals avoid it anyway, although it can catch on their fur if you're not careful. Do any of those sound like your plants? Not really. I know what poison choke looks like. I've never seen these particular plants before.
Lily folded her menu and placed it on the table, reminding Fluttershy that she hadn't chosen anything yet.
Well, can you describe it? I may not have to come up to your house at all. I'd rather not if I don't have to.
Ladies, are you ready to order?
Fluttershy let out a deep breath. Now that she had some time to think of a lie, it shouldn't be too hard.
Miss?
The waiter leaned a bit closer to Fluttershy.
I said, and what about you?
Oh, I'll have what she's having.
A very good thing. 2 ramen and watercress salad with carrot and cucumber. Coming right up.
Anyway, I didn't really get a good look at the plants.
Fluttershy looked to the side.
I, didn't want to take any risk with my animals. Well, then what makes you think I would want to get near it? Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't really think of that.
There was a painfully long silence. Fluttershy tried mumbling something a few times, but it was obvious she had blown her one and only chance with this pinnacle of pony perfection. She was mentally berating herself for the 4th time when their food arrived. Fluttershy wasn't hungry, but reluctantly picked up her fork anyway. She had a scoop inches from her mouth when she heard a loud, indignant gasp.
Sorry, is something wrong? Yes! There are only 13 carrots in this salad! Sorry, but what's the matter? What's the matter?
Lily recoiled in horror at the question.
Didn't you read the menu? It specifically said 14 hearty carrot chunks. I only ordered it because of my diet, and now my entire day is ruined. This is horror incarnate.
She swooned dramatically, slumping against her chair, her mouth hanging open in a silent wail. Fluttershy munched on her bite of salad slowly, then delicately swallowed.
I'm sorry, but I really don't see what the problem is.
Lily's head snapped up.
I shouldn't expect you to. You and your friends are always causing problems everywhere. What? No, we don't. Oh, don't you?
Lily leaned forward, and Fluttershy couldn't help but notice the way her mane and the flower in it swept seductively in front of her face before settling back into place.
That bunny stampede destroying my garden? Parasprays eating the town? Applejack's sister, what's her name, nearly infesting the town with those cursed cutie marks? It really wasn't that much of a stampede. I told Twilight I didn't want to have anything to do with you and your crazy problems. I have a very delicate disposition. I'm a precious flower. I can't keep risking life and loin and limb over these ridiculous situations. I just wanted some help identifying some plants,
Fluttershy said sheepishly.
And then what?
Lily gestured wildly with her hooves.
I go to your cottage to help you, and then what? We get attacked by timberwolves? The plants explode? My mane gets eaten by wandering hair spiders? I don't think those exist. Twilight tried to convince me that you were a delicate flower as well. Kept going on and on about how attractive and sensitive and attractive you are. But this...
Lily jabbed a hoof at her untouched food.
This salad disaster is an omen. I told Twilight this was a bad idea, no matter how attractive you are.
Lily suddenly leapt out of her seat.
Now, if you'll excuse me momentarily, I must track down our boorish waiter. Perhaps I can still salvage this fiasco of a meal.
Fluttershy watched her not-date walk towards the kitchen, and for some reason the swaying of her flank wasn't nearly as seductive as she would hoped it would be. Lily barged into the kitchen, and Fluttershy heard several muffled shouts. She could have sworn that Lily also gasped and audibly swooned at least 3 times. Fluttershy turned back to her salad. She nearly had a forkful ready when her hoof suddenly, reflexively, covered her mouth. She felt a smile creep over her face, and before she knew it, she had started laughing. Fluttershy flicked the lights on, and was immediately greeted by a manic grin inches from her face.
Hi, Fluttershy!
Twilight looked around for a few moments, then smacked herself in the face.
Duh, right.
She poked her head under the couch.
Sorry about that.
I know you said no teleporting and everything, but I couldn't wait to hear how your date went. Fluttershy slid out from under her couch.
Oh, sorry. It's okay.
She took a deep breath and gave Twilight the short version of her date. As the story finished, Twilight chuckled. Yeah, well, I tried to warn you about that. Fluttershy turned her head to the side.
I know, and I'm sorry I didn't listen to you, but, well...
She stole a glance at the calendar still on her wall.
The picture made her seem just like me, and I couldn't help but fantasize.
Oh, Fluttershy, fantasies are fun, but they're ultimately just that. Fantasies. It's like Sweet Emotion says, a real relationship is always more satisfying than a fantasy because you have to work at it a little. You can't expect the perfect pony to just show up. I guess as your wingmare, I didn't really tell you that properly. Twilight's ears drooped. This whole thing is sort of my fault. Fluttershy quickly pulled Twilight into a hug.
Don't be absurd, Twilight. You were a great wingmare. The best I've ever had.
Really? Fluttershy nodded.
Really? I'm just sorry I didn't listen to you. I guess I'll never find my very special sun pony at this rate.
Twilight grabbed Fluttershy and stared her right in the eyes. Don't say that! You're kind and smart and pretty and thoughtful and... I mean, my point is, any pony would be lucky to have you as a very special sun pony. You'll find them someday. Maybe you already know them. Fluttershy smiled.
Thanks, Twilight.
Twilight nodded and suddenly stood up. No problem. That's what wingmares are for, right? She started walking towards the door. Anyway, I should get home. Spike's probably worried. Twilight magicked the door open, but paused. She turned back to Fluttershy. You'll find your very special sun pony someday. I promise. Just maybe look around you instead of in your fantasies, okay?
Right. Realistic expectations. I was listening to your lecture, you know.
Fluttershy smiled sheepishly. Twilight grinned and walked outside. Fluttershy waved to Twilight and then sighed. She sidled back inside and shut the door.
Twilight's right. Tell the other ponies. Plenty of apples in the orchard, as Applejack says.
She began to head to her kitchen, but something caught her eye. The calendar was still hanging from her wall, the picture of Lily still hanging enticingly above the page for April. Fluttershy floated over and took the calendar down. It really was an amazing picture. The shot was centered perfectly on her cutie mark, and the use of perspective meant there was very little negative space. The truth of its subject didn't dull the subtlety and grace and confidence emanating from the page. Fluttershy sighed loudly.
Probably not healthy to obsess over it,
she admitted to herself. She closed the calendar and floated over to a kitchen drawer.
It is for next year. Perhaps by then I'll have gotten over it, or at least developed a new crush.
Fluttershy chuckled softly at the dash of self-deprecation and gently placed the calendar face down in her drawer. Then she paused. All the fine print on the back page of the calendar listed the ponies involved. Fluttershy had never bothered to read any of it. It seemed as trivial as most other legalese, and there was plenty to look at elsewhere. But one of the names listed on it caught her eye. It was italicized and set on its own line. Photography by Keen Eye, Cunning Camera Work Incorporated. Fluttershy finally closed the door and began to prepare dinner for her animals. As she did, her mind began to wander.
Keen Eye is a really nice name. I wonder if... No, that would be silly. But if they captured all those qualities in a photo, they must understand them, right? Maybe they use their photography to express themselves. What if they're a Pegasus who only flies if they really have to for aerial shots? Or they're an Earth pony who has to be really careful with all their cameras because they could only afford unicorn equipment, but they're so confident in their work it doesn't matter. Or what if...
Fluttershy was so lost in thought, she failed to notice she had overfilled Angel's bowl.
I wonder if Twilight takes a photography class.